Norfolk Island is a small, picturesque island located in the Pacific Ocean between Australia, New Zealand, and New Caledonia. As an external territory of Australia, it boasts a unique blend of Polynesian and European heritage, with a rich history tied to British colonialism and the descendants of the Bounty mutineers. The island is renowned for its rugged cliffs, lush pine forests, and pristine beaches, offering a tranquil escape for nature lovers and history enthusiasts alike. At the turn of the millennium, 29-year-old Janelle Patton was looking for a new beginning. After walking away from a tumultuous relationship, she left behind the chaos of Sydney and moved to the remote and peaceful Norfolk Island. She had become burdened by emotional exhaustion and disillusionment in the city, feeling trapped by a string of failed relationships, including one that turned violent. She longed for a quieter, more hopeful chapter. Norfolk Island seemed to offer that escape. After a short visit, Janelle secured a hotel job and rented an apartment, optimistic that the island's serenity might help her rebuild her life. But peace proved elusive. Friends and locals would later recall that her romantic experiences on the island were no more fulfilling than those she had left behind. Rumours suggested she had unknowingly become involved with at least one man who was already in a committed relationship, leading to tension and even a physical altercation with another woman. On the 31st of March 2002, which was also Easter Sunday, Janelle was eagerly anticipating a visit from her parents, who had just arrived on the island and were staying in a hotel nearby. She had promised to collect them for lunch after her morning shift between 1 and 2 p.m. However, she never appeared. That morning, Janelle was last seen walking along a coastal path to Queen Elizabeth Mount near her home, and was later spotted on grocery store CCTV. As the hours passed without contact, her parents grew worried. Their concern deepened when neither Janelle's co-workers nor her landlady had seen her since early that day. That evening, unable to reach her and fearing the worst, they reported her missing to police, unaware that the search for Janelle was already too late. Shortly after Janelle Patton was reported missing, a grim discovery was made by 2 New Zealand tourists exploring Norfolk Island. At Cockpit Waterfall Reserve, on the far side of the island from where Janelle was last seen, they found the body of a woman wrapped in a large black plastic sheet. The description matched Janelle, and though the scene was distressing, her landlady stepped in to confirm the identification, sparing Janelle's parents the trauma of seeing the remains themselves. What was meant to be a fresh chapter ended in tragedy. Janelle had been brutally murdered, becoming the first person to be killed on the island in over 150 years. Her death stunned the close-knit community and sent shockwaves far beyond its shores, drawing international media attention and launching one of the most haunting investigations in Australia's recent history. Tracking down Janelle Patton's killer would become a far more complex and daunting task than authorities initially anticipated. At the time, Norfolk Island was policed by just 2 local officers, hardly prepared for the island's first murder case in over a century. Realising the scale of the investigation, reinforcements were called in from mainland Australia. 2 Australian federal police detectives, Peters and Edmondson, were dispatched from Canberra, travelling over 1,000 miles to lead the high-profile case. Upon arrival, the detectives were met not only with grief and speculation, but with the challenge of separating hard evidence from the island's ever-churning rumour mill. They began by piecing together Janelle's final known movements on Easter Sunday. She had worked her morning shift in the dining room of the Castaway Hotel from 7 to 11 a.m. and was next captured on a supermarket security camera. Shortly afterwards, around 11:30 a.m, her landlady, Foxy McCoy, saw her leaving her cottage for her usual walk towards a scenic lookout. Along that route, she was seen by island resident Jodie Williams, who was driving her child around in hopes of getting them to sleep. Jodie passed Janelle once, but when she looped back just 5 minutes later, Janelle had vanished. Something, whatever it was, had happened in that brief window. Nearby, investigators found a pair of broken sunglasses at the roadside, ones that closely resembled those Janelle was photographed wearing the day before. Meanwhile, 2 golfers playing below the clifftop lookout recalled hearing a piercing scream, so prolonged and intense that one of them mistook it for the sound of an aircraft reversing on the nearby runway. It would be one of the few direct indicators of when, and perhaps where, Janelle's fatal encounter occurred. By mid-afternoon that same day, just hours after Janelle Patton vanished, heavy rain began to fall over Norfolk Island. Not far from the scene of her disappearance, near a well-known waterfall popular with tourists, a group of teenagers were enjoying the wet, grassy slopes, using the downpour as an opportunity for impromptu sliding. It was around 4 p.m. and they were unaware of what lay nearby, a black plastic tarp in the distance, concealing something unimaginable. It wasn't until around 6:15 p.m. that a pair of tourists made the grim discovery. Beneath the tarp was Janelle's body, brutally assaulted and left in a secluded area. Forensic pathologist Dr. Alan Calla, who would later examine the remains, was stunned. Despite conducting over 2,000 autopsies in his career, he described Janelle's injuries as some of the most violent he had ever seen. Janelle had clearly fought desperately for her life. Her hands bore deep defensive wounds, including a nearly severed thumb, likely caused when she tried to grab the attacker's knife. Her body was bruised and battered, indicating that she had been beaten, possibly with a blunt object like a bottle or a metal rod, and had suffered a fractured skull, broken ankle, and a shattered pelvis. One of the most chilling injuries was a forceful stab through her eye socket, among more than 65 stab wounds inflicted during the attack. Ultimately, it was a stab to her chest that pierced her lung and ended her life. Dr. Calla also noted peculiar clues: shards of glass, tiny paint flecks, and sand embedded in her hair and skin. Strangely, Janelle's clothing had been slashed. Her shirt, shorts, and underwear were all cut through, yet there was no evidence of sexual assault, leaving investigators puzzled by the intent behind the frenzied mutilation. And with the rain pouring down before her body was found, there were growing concerns about how much crucial forensic evidence may have been washed away for good. On the day Janelle Patton was murdered, Norfolk Island had a population of just 2,271 people. Investigators had the name of every individual present, which meant somewhere on that list they already had the name of her killer. The difficulty lay in uncovering which one it was. Driven by determination to crack the case, authorities went to extraordinary lengths, even pushing for changes to local laws so they could legally collect DNA and fingerprints from any resident aged 15 to 70 who was willing to participate. Investigators believed that if they could uncover the motive behind Janelle's murder, it might lead them directly to the person responsible. During their search of Janelle Patton's cottage, detectives uncovered a significant lead: her personal diary. Janelle had faithfully documented her life for years, naming names and revealing intimate details, and now her diary was about to expose not only her own secrets, but also the troubled lives of many island residents. However, there was one strange detail. She had abruptly stopped writing in February, just a month before her death. Despite the gap, the diary would provide crucial insight, becoming her voice to help guide investigators towards potential suspects. One of the key revelations in the diary was Janelle's tumultuous relationship with Jap Mingeti, a widowed man 20 years her senior. Jap had 4 children, including a 16-year-old daughter, Donna, who resented Janelle's presence. Janelle candidly wrote about her disdain for Donna, and the feelings were mutual. After their breakup, Janelle documented an angry encounter where Jap spat on her and declared, quote, "He's my first enemy on Norfolk." But Mengetti and his daughter weren't the only ones under suspicion. Laurie Bucket Quintal, another ex-boyfriend, also came under scrutiny. A descendant of the Bounty mutineers, Bucket had dated Janelle for several months, but their relationship had ended badly. Bucket admitted to detectives that a violent argument occurred on Valentine's Day, a month before Janelle's murder. In her cottage, detectives also found a distressing note Janelle had written to Bucket, quote, "Look, Bucket, I'm sore, I'm bruised big time. I'm devastated by everything you said and did to me last night." Despite the heated breakup, there was no direct evidence linking him to her death. Janelle's diary also revealed a bitter feud with Susan Fields, a married woman whom Janelle accused of having an affair. The conflict escalated into a physical confrontation at a local bar, resulting in an assault charge for Fields. As the inquest into Janelle's death unfolded, Islanders were shocked to learn the details of Janelle's tumultuous relationships and the strained connections she had with several locals. 16 individuals were named as persons of interest, including Janelle's own parents, whose arrival on the island just a day before her murder raised suspicions in the small community. While investigators had identified several people with potential motives for Janelle's murder, the public was soon informed that only one individual was connected to the crime through forensic evidence. Palm prints found on the black plastic sheet that had covered Janelle's body were traced back to a local builder named Steve Cochran. Cochran was known to use similar plastic for his work, but authorities could not determine whether the prints were left before or after the murder, and it was also possible that the plastic had been taken from his construction site. For a time, this discovery left the case shrouded in mystery. Cochran himself had no explanation for the prints, and despite intensive investigation, detectives could not find any further evidence or direct link that tied him to the crime. It was later reported that there were over 10 different fingerprints found on the same plastic sheet. Despite investigating the 16 individuals, each with solid alibis, authorities were left with no concrete evidence to identify Janelle's killer or to understand the motive behind her death. The investigation had uncovered nothing more than a web of hurt feelings and broken relationships. However, Detective Bob Peters, who delayed his own retirement until he solved the case, was on the verge of an important breakthrough when, around 2 years after Janelle's death, Detective Peters was reviewing old case files hoping to find a link to Janelle's murder when he came across a fingerprint card from a burglary that had occurred around the same time as her death. Peters sent the prints off for comparison with those found on the tarp covering Janelle's body, not expecting much. To his surprise, there was a match to Glenn Peter Charles McNeil, a chef who had been living and working on the island at the time of the murder. While detectives Peters and Edmondson were excited by this breakthrough, they knew they needed more evidence before making an arrest. By 2004, McNeil had left Norfolk Island, but detectives Peters and Edmondson were still searching for evidence of his time there, particularly his white Honda, which they believed may have been used to transport Janelle's body after she was killed. If she had been in McNeil's car, there could be trace evidence left behind. Despite months of searching, they found nothing until a former neighbour of McNeil's heard on the radio that authorities were looking for a white Honda. The neighbour recalled seeing a car abandoned in front of McNeil's house, one that McNeil had tried to take to the junkyard. When police investigated, they discovered a wealth of evidence in the car's trunk. bloodstains, paint flecks, and glass shards, matching those found in Janelle's hair. After nearly 4 years of investigation, they finally had enough evidence to make an arrest. MacLeod was located nearly 1,000 miles away in New Zealand, living with his partner and children. Authorities successfully obtained an arrest warrant and took him into custody. Despite never being listed as a person of interest or being mentioned in Janelle's diary, MacLeod's connection to the case was undeniable. Glenn MacLeod calmly recounted to Detective Peters that on the morning of Janelle's murder, he had smoked marijuana before driving. While reaching for his cigarettes, he lost control of the vehicle and struck something. Realising he had hit a person, he panicked, placed Janelle's body in the trunk and drove home. Once inside, MacLeod said he wanted to ensure she was dead, so he went to the kitchen before returning to the car. There, he opened the trunk and attacked Janelle with a knife. With MacLeod's confession now on videotape, authorities had the evidence they needed. However, several aspects of his story did not align with the physical evidence. While MacLeod claimed he had only stabbed Janelle once, the autopsy had revealed 64 wounds, showing she had fought for her life. After being shown the autopsy photos, MacLeod altered his account. He stated he heard muffled sounds from the trunk of his vehicle, and after realising that Janelle was still alive, attacked her with a fish filleting knife, quote, 3 or 4 times. He also said she didn't defend herself, which again contradicted with the evidence. MacLeod told Detective Peters that after the attack, he wrapped Janelle's body in a plastic that he found behind his house and drove to the Cockpit Waterfall Reserve, where he disposed of her. He revealed to Peters that the guilt had consumed him since the murder, and he had attempted to take his own life 6 times. After his confession, MacLeod wrote a statement that included, quote, "It makes me sick and sad what I have done, and only wish to do what is right." Meanwhile, Janelle's parents were left to grapple with the incomprehensible tragedy. Although the nature of Janelle's murder appeared deeply personal, detectives Peters and Edmondson were never able to uncover any proof that she and MacLeod had ever met. However, during a visit to Norfolk Island, a compelling account emerged. Greg Magri, a close friend of Janelle's, claimed that she and MacLeod did in fact know each other, recalling a night when they both turned up at his home. According to Greg, the two seemed comfortable and familiar, though not romantically involved. While he's convinced MacLeod is responsible for her death, Greg also believes the island is still concealing the full truth, and that someone else may have played a role. Glenn MacLeod was moved to Silverwater Correctional Centre in Sydney to await his trial. On February 1st, 2007, his murder trial began. To protect the limited pool of potential jurors from Norfolk Island, Chief Justice Mark Weinberg imposed a press blackout. On March 1st, 2007, MacLeod denied any involvement in Janelle's death, stating in court, quote, "I did not kill Jeanette Patton. I did not abduct her. I did not see Janelle Patton that day." He claimed he could not recall his earlier confession to the police, explaining that he, quote, "would have admitted to anything due to his mental health issues." The trial concluded on March 9th, 2007, when the jury found him guilty, though the motive and surprising unexplained female DNA found on the body remained unresolved. On July 25th, 2007, Chief Justice Weinberg sentenced MacLeod to 24 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 years. MacLeod appealed his conviction, arguing that his police statement should not have been used as evidence, but the full court dismissed his appeal. The High Court of Australia also rejected his attempt to appeal on November 14th, 2008. Janelle's mother, Carolyn, stated, quote, We are Janelle's parents, and I don't think any parent would be satisfied with any length of time. We're just glad he was convicted of the crime, and that he has been sentenced to a fairly lengthy time in jail. Glenn MacNeil was released from prison on January 31st, 2024, and immediately deported to Christchurch, New Zealand, where he is to reportedly serve his parole. Janelle Patton will be remembered as a vibrant, spirited woman whose life was marked by her courage to seek new beginnings and her willingness to connect with others, even in unfamiliar places. She was a daughter, a friend, and a woman navigating her own path on Norfolk Island, a place she hoped would offer peace and purpose. In the face of heartbreak and conflict, Janelle remained outspoken and unafraid, and that resilience became part of her legacy. She is remembered not just for the tragic circumstances of her death, but for the light she brought into the lives of those who loved her, which continues to echo in the island's memory.